me begin by telling you about what is going on beneath all of the noise at the moment and chaos that we're hearing, specifically about Brexit. Because the government are playing a game of two stories. They're delivering two themes that are coming out through the media. Number one, to the Brexiteers, what you're hearing is that Brexit is being betrayed. That Keir Starmer is a Remainer, he always wanted to be close to Europe, and he's going to betray you, Brexiteers, by rejoining the EU, and we're going to be captured by the EU, and it's so bad and it's a betrayal. And then to the Remainers, they are saying that we are respecting the Brexit red lines, but we are going back as close as possible to the EU by aligning with EU regulations, and it will make trade easier. That's what they're saying. In truth, what they're doing is they are deregulating behind the scenes. They are using Henry VIII powers to change the law to deregulate. I have mentioned this in other videos, but there has been a big development. And the reason they're playing two narratives is really to hypnotise people or distract them away from what is going on. In many ways, the Brexiteers in the Conservative Party and the Reform Party are actually really happy with what Starmer is doing because they want the American trade deal. And we know that we have the American trade deal, which Keir Starmer has made a decision on by subverting Parliament and using statutory instruments, Henry VIII powers, to say, yes, we're going to have this American trade deal. And that has happened. But in addition to that, they have been laying down statutory instruments, which are ministers going out and changing the law without our sovereign parliament having any say on it. And they have done this, as I've already said in other videos, they have done it with some food regulations. But we have discovered that they have gone much further. And we discovered this because today there's been an article in Politico which is headlined with the theme that the government want to carve out in the Brexit reset negotiations for higher standards, they're saying, around live exports and foie gras and other such niche things to please animal welfare activists. In truth, the live exports thing is a scam because we cannot control live imports. We can stop live exports, but actually, if you stop live exports from Kent, it's actually cruel because it means they probably have to send them to Wales instead of going to France, which is a lot closer. Or if you think about Scotland all the way down to Wales, it's actually a silly thing. It doesn't really make any sense. All it does is make it harder for us to trade with Europe. And so hanging on to that carve out, as they're calling it, is a nothing thing. And really what they are doing, and further on in the Politico article, they do disclose that actually the government have used a statutory instrument to deregulate chicken handling. And they have now made it legal for chicken farmers to be able to handle the birds by the legs. And this is a very big divergence from EU regulations. It is a fast creeping towards the American standards. And the good news is that an organisation run mostly by lawyers has picked up that the government have tried to deregulate animal welfare standards, and they are taking the government to court, and they've had permission already for a judicial review to challenge the government's decision to deregulate animal welfare for chickens. So the interesting thing from the public's perspective is that there is a legal challenge, and instead of it being headline news, the government is being challenged on their deregulation. So instead of levelling with us and telling us the truth about what's going on, we have got a misleading headline. Most of the article talks about stuff which is irrelevant and nonsense, and then the real detail is right at the bottom of the article. And it has also been reported in Food Manufacture about this court case, but nowhere else. Radio silence. But it is something that is going to cause outrage, because the British people are very, very supportive of high standards, and beginning the drip into the American standards is not what people want. It's also not what people voted for, because Labour's manifesto promised to uphold our high standards, and they are subverting parliamentary sovereignty to get what they want via statutory instruments, Henry VIII powers, to please the corporate lobbyists who are controlling them. That is the truth of what's going on. And then, of course, enter the stage Donald Trump this week, who sat down in Scotland with the Prime Minister and said what British farmers want to hear. And many British farmers were delighted to hear him say that he's supporting them by being against the inheritance tax that Labour has put on British farmers and our food system. And that has been done on purpose, because they want to, the people that are behind the American trade deal, they don't want people to rally up and protest against the American trade deal. We did this 5 years ago when Boris Johnson was in office, and we won. And so they're having another go at it. And this time they're being sneaky, and they are trying to say what certain protest groups want, and they would rather have the farmers distracted by the inheritance tax than focusing on the real dilemma for us, which is the American trade deal. Don't misunderstand me. The inheritance tax is particularly cruel for older farmers, and it is causing huge anxiety because there's been no time for farmers to adjust to succession planning, and there's also really tough times now. There is really high risk in trying to produce any food to feed your animals because there's no support, and the weather is incredibly difficult, and because of the Ukraine war and everything else, Rachel Reeves' budget, inputs are more expensive because inflation is soaring. And all of these things, you might think, I'm not interested in farmers, they voted for Brexit. Well, we didn't all vote for Brexit. And not only that, it impacts you, because if we don't feed you, you are going to be fed by imports, substandard imports, and then we are hostages to a fortune, because you will have to pay whatever they decide to make you pay, because when there's no competition left in Britain, they will have control of the entire market. And we're seeing this with the water board. You're forced to pay high costs for your water. There's no competition really, and they're serving us really poor quality water. In addition to this, the other thing that's come out this week is that, as we warned with Brexit, foodborne illness is on the rise, and a lot of it is coming from lettuce. And that's also to do with water, because the water is no longer safe. And all of this deregulation is about Brexit. It is all about becoming more like America, where the corporations control everything and we are just ants in the system, and it's called neo-feudalism. It is, to all intents and purposes, corporatism, or if you want to call it another word, fascism. And this is direct risk for the EU as well, because it won't stop with us. This infection will continue to spread, and it already has been spread, because the far right have been here, Steve Bannon in Italy, spreading and pushing the Overton window to the right. So it's really important that we all notice what is going on. We listen to people who are telling us the truth. We also share this news with other people that we know, and we get behind campaigns that are trying to take back control. I hope you found this interesting, and I am now going to play you don't have to watch it, I'm going to play you Trump's interview on in Scotland, where he was asked the question by GB News, which I'm pretty sure was a put up, and enjoy.
We have a lot of
Who are
unhappy...
you with? Because you're asking such nice
Sorry,
questions.
GB News, Bev Turner from GB News.
Very good.
We have a lot of unhappy farmers in this country at the moment, and I'm sure the Prime Minister won't thank me for raising this. We've had changes to inheritance tax, which mean a lot of farmers feel they're going to lose their farms when they die or their father dies. How important are farmers to a country?
You mean they're going to lose the farm because of estate taxes?
Correct. So that when they die, they'll have to pay so much. They're cash poor, but they have great
I
properties.
know. Well, they're cash poor. They're land rich and cash poor. A lot of people are. I've had that too. Sometimes I'm land rich and cash. Sometimes I'm cash rich and land poor. I like it both ways, but as I get older, I like the more conservative route. So I did something that I don't know if you can do, but it was great. I love our farmers. As you know, in our tax bill, we have a clause that's very important. We were losing a lot of farms to the banks because a loving mother and father would die and left their farm to their children or their child, but their children, their family. And they loved their family, and they thought they were doing them a favor, but they had a 50% tax to pay. So the land would get valued, and at a high number, because some of the farms were valuable, but they didn't, they couldn't quantify it. And they'd go out and borrow money to pay the estate tax or the death tax, as it's called. And they'd overextend, and they'd lose the farm. And they'd commit suicide in many cases.
Yeah, we're seeing that.
No. Our levels are nowhere near 50%.
They're not 50%, but the dissatisfaction is real.
We've just introduced where it's paid over many years, works out
that's
about
good.
an extra 2% a year over 10 years. So it's not at those levels by any stretch of the imagination. But the other thing that we've done, as you know, is make sure that we've got a pathway for farmers that actually increases their year-on-year income, which is the most important thing. And in all of the deals that we do, we ensure that our farmers are the central focus for much of it, particularly in agriculture, including in the US deal, because I don't think we can go on for years saying that it's acceptable for farmers to have a year-on-year income which isn't sufficient. We've got to fix that problem. We can't simply live with that problem, so it's a very different situation.
Well, we ended the estate tax. There is no estate tax on farms.
Maybe you could do the same.
So.
Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, do consider subscribing, and also comment below. Do let me know what you think, and if you've got any questions, email me.